Hi, I'm Anke Herman. I live in the south of Spain and I sew made-to-measure flamenco dance costumes. Yep, all custom orders. What I'd like to talk about in this video is how you can sew for others when you hate dealing with clients. Well, I think there are 4 options. The first one would be to simply not sew for others. Well, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing really depends on what sewing is for you, and if having your own sewing business is a dream for you, then how important that dream is to you. So, there's no right or wrong answer. So that's definitely one option that may perfectly be valid for you. Now, if you do really want to give it a go, and if you're not quite ready to give up on that dream yet, then option number 2 would be find yourself better clients. And that, depending on your area of specialty, may be easier than you think. Number 3, if you can't find better clients, option number 3 would be to not accept custom orders, to just make things that you like and then sell them, and then find somebody who wants to buy the item as it is, so you don't have that creative process with the custom order client. And option number 4 would be to find a way to deal with your clients so that you don't hate them. And as you can guess, option number 4 is really what I want to focus on, but let's just go through the 4 options, and you then choose which one is best. You can choose which one is best for you, and if you have another option, then please in the comments let me know what you think about it. Now, what sparked this video and the title of it was a Facebook post I saw in a group for sewing not long ago, and there was a lady who just needed a minute to vent, and her post was something along the lines, I hate sewing for others, and hate was written in capital letters. And so she goes on to say something like, don't you just hate it when people want you to make things that they find in magazines or they see somewhere that are obviously haute couture kind of garments, and they want you to make it for a price that wouldn't even cover the material costs. And that post really caught my attention for a couple of reasons. Number 1, the first thing was my reaction was oh God, do I feel you. I so know what that's like. Because a few years back I was really close to selling my sewing machines. Not because of lack of work, on the contrary. I was really flat out and I was utterly exhausted, and I was totally stressed and burnt out, really thanks to my demanding clients. Now, and I put that in quote intentionally, and that's really what I want to get back to when we talk about option 4 of how to find a way to deal with your clients so that you don't actually have to hate them. Now, the other thing that really surprised me was the amount of comments that post got. So there were lots of likes, but there was hundreds of comments. And I was a bit surprised, because if you're not really interested in making money sewing, selling your talent and your work, then that post wouldn't have caught your attention, and then you wouldn't have bothered to actually comment and say something. So I thought, I was actually surprised how many people obviously have played or are playing with the idea of turning their sewing hobby into some kind of business. Now, and the other thing that really struck me was that there was really only 3 types of responses, and they really map with option number 1 and 3 really. The overwhelming majority of comments were in 2 groups. There was one group that was, there were people that said God, I hated sewing for others, and it was such a nightmare. And, you know, just dealing with people took all the fun out of sewing, and it was just stressful. So I'm back to sewing just for myself and maybe friends and family. So these people had actually gone out, sold items, garments they made, but found the whole dealings with people just too much and too much of a pain in the butt. So they said, well, that's like way too hard. I'm going back to just sewing it as a hobby. So they've gone out, felt disappointed, or it was all too hard, and they've kind of pulled out. Now, what struck me there was like, now I can see how, when you're not really used to dealing with clients like that, and so that there will be challenging moments, and that there'll be let's say painful clients, like I totally get that. But that I felt it was a shame to see that the only option they saw was to just not do it. And that they didn't go out and say, well, okay, now what else can I do? Now I'm pretty sure that this has something to do with the other options you have. So if either you've got another job that, you know, you're quite happy to do, or you've got another income in your family, so you don't really, well, if that doesn't work out and if it's also stressful, you just pull out, well, that's fair enough. I sometimes think the fact that my sewing business, I moved to Spain with the idea of setting up my sewing business, so starting my sewing business. So ever since I've moved to Spain in 2004, this has been my only source of income. And so I didn't have an easy alternative. And sometimes I'm pretty sure that this is what actually helped me push through that moment where I thought, this is all too hard, it's just such a pain in the ass, really, to be blunt. And so if if you don't have that, and if you do have alternatives, then, I would just say reflect on how important that dream is for you. How do you feel when you see a movie about Coco Chanel? Or if you see The Dressmaker with Kate Winslet? How do you feel when you see these movies? Do you think, does your heart bleed to think, oh, I would have loved to do that? And is it worth exploring other solutions to the dilemma? I'll leave it at that. Now, the other big group of people that responded in the comments were the ones who said, oh, I would never sew for other people. Now, what if I make something and then the client doesn't like it? That would really hurt my feelings. No, I just sew for myself and for my family. Now, these people obviously have the idea. It's there, strong enough for them to put a comment there. But they don't even go out and try. They allow future, which means imaginary clients' reactions, to turn them off the whole idea. So again, you decide. If you feel like that, you decide how important is that dream for you. Is sewing a real passion for you? And what are you prepared to do? Are you prepared to look at other ways of dealing with this? Is there a way that dealing with clients can be fun? Which then means that having a sewing business where you work on custom orders can be hugely satisfying and fun. Now, there were a couple of people who said, oh, no, I don't want to do custom orders because, that whole struggle, then a lot of people aren't as good a designer as they think they are. So basically they asked me to do really hideous things, and now I'm in this dilemma and I don't want to do that. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I have clients like this, and there you've got really a job on your hands that isn't specific to sewing. So this is basically the client comes up with something that you, with your experience and your taste and your way of seeing things, think that's totally hideous. And now you need to find a way of dealing with that. If the client walks away happy, then, well, then that's fair enough. I guess the risk there, or where you feel that's uncomfortable, is, you know, they want something that's really hideous, you make it, and then they're going to hate it, and then they're going to blame you for it. So, but that's not something that is really specific to sewing. I think you probably know how to deal with those situations a lot better than you think. And a lot of people have to deal with that kind of situation in the kind of work they do. You know, just take the classic, this example that jumps to my mind is a hairdresser. Now, how many times will a hairdresser have to handle a situation like that when a client comes in with a photo of some celebrity's haircut and says, oh, I want my haircut like that. And the hairdresser goes, "Ooh, yep, well, I think with your hair, this isn't going to look the same." So they have to now either explain to you that your hair, you know, the same cut with your hair isn't going to look like that, or with your shape of your face, it isn't the same, it isn't going to be, you know, as cool as that one, or point it out and you say, yes, I do want it, and then you go ahead. So they've got to deal with that situation every day. And I remember in my software development days, before I started my own business, well, that was a very, very common thing, that client would ask you to do things where you thought, well, that's kind of stupid. You know, and there was even like a saying, it was like a total classic basic rule in software development, is doing what the client asks you to do is the quickest way to a screwed up project. So you learn there to manage clients' expectations. But then if you think it like that, it's like every time your child wants something that doesn't make sense, you find a way to either understand why they want it and find a solution, or you help them understand why this isn't a good idea. And so this is no different. So I'm pretty sure if you are sort of worried about that, you're way better way better equipped to handle that situation than you may think. And so then there were quite a few people who would say, I just don't do custom orders at all. So, and that is something that also struck me, because I thought, for me, making something and then try and find somebody to sell it to was always, for me, I see that as the way more stressful way of working, because I work exclusively on custom orders. And so that means everything I start is sold. So I never have to go out and buy fabric, invest time into something that I don't know yet whether somebody will want to buy. So again, if your whole outlook at the whole thing is more, oh yeah, that's a hobby, and if I manage to sell something, then that's cool, and if not, that's fine too, then there's no problem with that. But if you go in with the intention of earning some money here, then I find custom orders way less stressful, because the client is involved in what you're doing. So I don't know, I never even thought of, like, the idea that a client might not like what I'll do. Yeah, kind of the thought was probably there, but it was just not the default reaction I expected from a potential client. So it was more of a matter of, you know, in that initial consultation, we need to find out that we need to make sure that I really understand what you want and what you need. And I will give my opinion if I think what you want is kind of hideous or not a good idea out of. And then I'll explain, you know, okay, and a classic example in the flamenco costume world is you know, you've got the long skirts, and usually the bottom part there's frills and ruffles. And don't ask me what the difference is, I don't know. So now somebody will come up and say, I want a dress, a red dress with black polka dots, and then the ruffles will be black. And I'll say, I don't think that's a really good idea, because if the ruffles are black, that means the whole dress will make you look really short. It will make your legs and you as a dancer look really short, because the eye goes to the brighter colors, and especially if you're on a stage and it's darkish light, so that's what the eye really perceives, and so the bottom part is kind of like wiped out, so you're going to look really like a little, you know, not very flattering at all. So just pointing that out. Now you decide. Yeah, I do want to go ahead with it because there's, you know, that costume goes with, you know, I'm going to dance with 3 other people who have the costumes like that, so it needs to be like this, and that's cool. Well, then it's fine. So if you explain why you think it's not a good idea, but then, client, you decide. It's your outfit. You need to love it. And as long as you're aware, then I've never had a client come back and say, well, but that looks horrible and it's now your fault. You know, like if you've pointed that out before, then they're not causing any trouble in that direction. And the most common reaction is actually, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, thank you. Well, then what do you think? What should we do? What would be a better way of doing it? And then you can discuss solutions. And when you come to an agreement and you both really know what you're doing and why you're doing it that way, then you usually don't have a problem with the client being unhappy afterwards. Now, well, there are different types of clients. Some see a piece of fabric and they can imagine immediately what it will look like, and the consultation is a 5-minute job. And then you have other clients, like I've got some Japanese clients, and they find deciding really difficult. So the whole process will be taking longer, but that's just takes longer. That's all there is. And but when I take on a project, it's sold. I never work on something that isn't sold. And I've tried it once with practice skirts because I thought they sell like hotcakes, and I've had lots of skirts, even, you know, people buy them off my body, like I'm wearing them, and they go, oh, I love your skirt, and I'm like, well, okay, you want to try it on, and then if you like it, it's yours. So I've sold lots of skirts like that. And so they kind of, I know that they sell quickly and easily, and so I thought maybe it's a good idea to actually have a bit of a range and to just sort of, you know, have them kind of ready-made. So I've picked 3-4 the popular designs, 3-4 of the popular colors, and, you know, with the elastic skirts you don't have much trouble with the sizes, so I had like small, medium, large, so that would kind of cover everybody. It took ages to sell these skirts because every time someone comes, well, and first of all, the whole idea changed. It wasn't like, oh, this is something that's made for me. You know, it makes people feel special. So that element wasn't there anymore. And so they kind of go, oh yeah, I kind of like that, but oh no, I already have a black one. I want it in a different color, and you just don't have it in that color. Or they say, I like this one in that color, but I need it bigger, I need it smaller. So it was like really difficult. So for people in that common thread, the idea of selling and making stuff and then sell it seemed like the easy way out of having to deal with clients. And my experience just doesn't go there in that direction. I've always felt that, you know, working with clients, as long as you get to a sense of clarity and an agreement of what we're going to do, then, you know, this is the way easier way of to make money sewing. Now, the option, the fourth one that I really have found has changed my business around, was to find a way of dealing with clients and not, so that I don't have to hate them. Now, the first thing, when I really hit rock bottom and I was like, okay, something changes here, or I'm going to throw all this stuff in the corner and do something else, I was like, I hate my clients. And I hate them all. And it's like, how can like the Spanish, they're just so demanding and they're just so inconsiderate and they're like, blah, blah, blah. And I was kind of carrying on. And at the same time, I felt trapped because I thought, well, if I now put my foot down and say, well, I'm not going to accept this and that. For a long time, it was always, oh, now my whole business has grown by word of mouth. And I thought, well, if I now kind of peeves some of them off, then they will go on and tell all their mates and nobody would ever order anything again. And so that's why I actually put up with a lot of crap for a very long time. And that got me to that kind of really to the edge of where I thought, well, or something changes or I'm out of here. Now, two things there. Out of here wasn't that easy. You know, if you do that in Spain, that was in the middle of crisis. So it wasn't that there were loads of job options around. And I hadn't done anything else here in Spain. So just going out, getting another job wasn't easy. There was no other household income. So it wasn't just like, okay, I'm just to throw it and give up and then slowly figure out what I want to do. So, you know, there were bills to pay. So for me, actually finding a way out of the mess was the easiest way out. So that's why I'm not really blaming anybody, because I'm always saying, like, if I had had an easier option, I probably would have taken it. So, okay, in hindsight, I'm glad things worked out the way they did, because it did bring some insights that I wouldn't have otherwise had the chance to have. But it surely wasn't, you know, it was really a matter of, if that been an easier way out, I would have taken it. And so I really got to the point, I thought, how can I, my question was like, how can I change the Spanish to drive me mad? And then all of a sudden it occurred to me to think, well, who am I to change the Spanish? And then, is it even about the Spanish? But what I did in that process was, what is it that I find annoying about a client? So there were things like, I hate it when they don't show up for appointments and don't cancel. When they sort of expect me to come and deliver their dress to where they are at the time they want, without even considering whether that works out for me as well. So this total lack of consideration. So there were a few things that I kind of felt really made me hate dealing with a client. But I also thought about how, now, I don't really hate all of my clients. You know, there were a few that I really loved working with, and I sort of thought, now, who are there? Now, there's, you know, Rachel in the US, and there's, you know, so-and-so here and so-and-so there, and I thought, now, what do they have in common? What makes me love working with them so much? And then what popped up were things like, they value my time. They value my work, so they'll never haggle, they never argue over prices, and so in prices really never something that's, they prefer the beautiful solution rather than the cheap one when it comes to choosing fabrics and materials and stuff like that. And they left me a lot of freedom, so they weren't micromanaging, you know, the color of the thread, wherever. So they kind of said, well, this is the idea, this is what I want, you go and do whatever, you do your magic. And that's like, I love that. I love that when I know I'm on the same wavelengths with the client. If I feel that we don't have the same taste, and I can't ever be sure that if I really love something that you may think, that's horrible, so then I won't kind of do your thing. But if I'm on the same wavelengths with the client, like, that's the best thing. Like, they can do whatever you want, and you know they're going to love it. So, you know, this is like really ideal client. So that was really helpful to even be clear about that. And then I created a mental blacklist for clients in my mind. I never wrote that down anywhere, and I never said a word to a client. It was just like, okay, unacceptable behavior would be, oh, you cancel, you give me a no-show, you just don't show up, or you show up an hour late, which happens in Spain, or you call me at 11 at night, happens in Spain, especially when your clients are dancers who walk out of the tablao at 11 at night, and that's when they think about their costume. So it happens, but, you know, considering that I may have to get up at 6 in the morning, it's not funny. So every time somebody did that, something like this, it was like, ooh, you're with both feet on the blacklist, which meant, okay, I'm going to finish off what I'm doing for you, but next time you call, I'm going to be busy. So that took the pressure off. It was like, phew, okay, I'll just finish this off and I won't ever have to deal with you again. And it was almost like it took away that, yeah, the anger, it took away the resentment. It was just like, bring it on, I'm just waiting for you. Because, you know, I find dealing with you really annoying, so I'm just waiting for you to pull one off so I can throw you onto the blacklist. And because it was also, I was at a point where I thought, well, if people then start talking badly and nobody ever orders, I don't care anymore. So it was really, I needed that kind of to hit that brick wall. But then I realized, no, it wasn't that bad. You know, what I found was as soon as I had clear in my mind that who I enjoyed working with, more of those people somehow showed up. And I didn't even lose a lot of my existing clients. I didn't. It was like most of them somehow sensed that, you know, the bullshit threshold had changed and they couldn't get away with treating me like the cleaner anymore. And somehow, I really don't know why it worked exactly. If you don't want to go into metaphysics or like your spiritual world or whatever, I really can't tell you why exactly it worked. But it is clear that I came across in a different way. And most of my clients, I mean, some didn't come back, but nobody I'm missing. It was like the few people that stayed away, I was like, thank God. You know, thank you, universe, to kind of keep these people out of my studio. But most people actually turned around. The way they treated me when it was before, you know, you'd get a message and it was like, oh, you've got to come at 3, but don't be late because I've got to go somewhere important. It's now, oh, how you going? Would 3 o'clock work with you? If not, let me know and we'll sort out something different. Oh yeah, I can live with that. Another insight that really helped an awful lot was to realize that people in general don't get up in the morning thinking, now how can I screw over the dressmaker? No, it's worse. They don't even think about you. That's the thing, and because I found I get upset when I think that somebody not showing up means they don't respect me, they don't value me as a person. So that made it for me really hard to be creative and inspired when it comes to make their costume. Now, if I feel that they do something to hurt me, to annoy me, to piss me off, then that has an impact. Now, as soon as I realized that's not personal, they just do what's best for them. You know, and if they, oh, I couldn't make it, oh well, you know, whatever. So they just, and they've got lots of other things going on, and so you kind of, perhaps, you know, not the highest priority in their day. And if they're inconsiderate, it's not because they're out there to get you. They just really don't consider you. And for me, that's a lot less personal. And so I don't get as upset about it. I might still dump you onto the blacklist if, you know, if I feel that I can't work like that, lose too much time. And then I may still decide whether I want to work with you again or not. And that's the other good thing. It's like, you know, people seem to be so worried about having to deal with clients that are horrible that they kind of seem to forget that, hey, you're the boss. If you don't want to work with a client, there's nobody who can make you work with that client. You're always free to say, or you can be open and say something like, we're not on the same wavelengths. I don't think us working together is a good idea. Or you can, you know, if you don't want to confront someone like that, you can always say like, look, I'm busy. You know, I've got a big order on and I won't have time until like 3 months down the line. And that usually is enough for people to go away. Another thing, if somebody is kind of, you know, when you feel someone is a little bit annoying and you kind of, you know, you're sort of dreading it a bit, well, they're perfect candidates for you to try and raise your to learn how to raise your prices. So these are the kind of people that you can practice quoting a really higher price. Be careful, because you might, quite often you're actually surprised. Because, I mean, you know, whatever we feel reasonable or not reasonable, we usually tend to assume what's reasonable for other people. And, you know, more often than not, we're probably wrong. So don't do that with people that you really don't want to work with. So do that with people if you think, well, they're a little bit annoying, they're draining, they, you know, they suck my energy. Well, if she paid $500, I'd do it. Well, quote her 500 and see what happens. If she doesn't go for it, well, then that's fine. You don't have to deal with it. And if she does go with it, then that's great, you know. And then you learn to overcome that fear of, now what if she says that's too expensive or I can't afford it? Do that, practice that with a client that you don't care about whether she accepts the project or not. Yeah, but again, like, be careful, because, you know, you'd be surprised how often actually say, okay. And you think, oh shit, oh, that's stupid. I could have, you know, I could have charged way more, a lot sooner. And so yeah, kind of understanding that it isn't personal. Because, I mean, how you feel about what a client does or doesn't do or say really depends on what you think about it and how you see the situation. If you think, for the poor thing, like, she's totally overwhelmed and she's really stressed out because she's not sure whether she's going to be fired at the theatre where she's working, and then you know, you think, oh, well, poor thing, you know, you behave like a bit of an idiot, but, you know, not a big deal. If you think, oh, you know, she's out there to hurt me and to ruin my business and I'll be on the streets, like, yeah, obviously it affects you in a different way. So you've got a lot more power than you think. And if somebody doesn't make you feel great, you're not under any obligation to work for them. So that's the great idea. So I could probably go on about that for a lot longer, but I want to leave it here, and I just want to encourage you to reflect on it, to see whether having your own sewing business is really important to you. It's a dream that would that you would regret having given up on when you look back on your life later on. And so if you're one of the people who thinks that pulling back and not doing it is the only option when you face difficult clients, then I just want to encourage you to think again and to see whether there's another way of, whether you can find a way of dealing with your clients so that it's actually fun. And if you'd like to have a conversation about that, I would love to, you know, hop onto Skype with you and talk about your particular situation to see whether, you know, maybe there's some insight that I can help you get that gets you unstuck and off and running and so smoothly. So please get in touch and let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.